Okay, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for coming to the workshop. This is the fourth one, and today we're going to be talking about Web3 and basically what Web3 means and why it matters. This is the fourth installation of the workshops leading up to BlockHack. This is the last one, right? Yep. So let's get started. This is just a nice little diagram that goes over kind of why we have Web3 and why we need it to interact with any blockchain, specifically the Ethereum blockchain in this case. Web3 uses RPC, which stands for Remote Procedural Calls, which makes calls to functions to interact with the blockchain. And as you can see here, each instance will use a separate set of calls depending on the user. Furthermore, previously we were using truffle console commands to interact with the blockchain and receive functions and call data. And we're moving towards Web3, which does this basically the same thing, communicates with nodes to call functions. But it's a lot more user-friendly, and you can build it into a web framework, which we'll be going over today. So a little bit about RPC. It's going to be interacting with the Ethereum ABI, which stands for Application Binary Interface. And each blockchain has their own ABI. And the Ethereum ABI is probably the most easy to work with right now. And what an ABI does is it allows you to call functions in a contract and pull data from that contract. And the reason why this is important because it determines how functions are called and in which binary format the information should be passed. So why does this all matter? This matters because with any blockchain, any database, you only want certain users to have access to certain information. So this allows only certain users to call certain functions and pull certain data, not all the data that is stored in the blockchain or a blockchain. And in this instance, the ABI is we're going to be using the JSON format because it's the lightest weight and easiest to work with. But there are other formats out there. Python has a format for Web3 Ethereum ABI, but it's a little more complicated. So you're probably familiar with an API, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between an ABI and an API. So an API is an application programming interface. Pretty straightforward. It basically defines the interface where a piece of software communicates with another source level in the system. Where an API is basically like an ABI is like an API, but at a lower level. So ABI stands for Application Binary Interface, like we've gone over before. And an API defines the source interface, or the API defines the source interface, and the ABI defines the lower level binary interface between two or more pieces of software on a particular architecture. And this basically defines how it interacts with itself and other applications through kernels and other things like that. And we're going to be using it mostly to compile data. Moving forward, we'll talk a little bit about the JSON-RPC format that we'll be using. So the reason we're using JSON is because it's a really lightweight form to interchange data formats. And we're using all ABIs are going to be using the RPC instance, which basically is what calls the functions and receives the data. And together, the definition of a JSON-RPC is a stateless, lightweight, remote procedural call protocol. So it defines structures and rules around processing data. And I thought this was interesting. It is transport agnostic, meaning it can be used over many different passing environments, which I thought was interesting. So lastly, what does Web3 do? So by now you probably get a good understanding of what Web3 does. It's a standardized DApp API that runs on all Ethereum nodes. So if you want a decentralized application, you need Web3 to basically deploy it and have people interact with it if you don't want them to use the Truffle console. So it interacts with contract functions. It can send transactions to contracts and add extra data. It can query the blockchain for data. And most importantly, it can deploy contracts. And that's what we'll be going over today, is with our second workshop, we're going to be kind of basing this instance of Web3 off of that previous tutorial. It's going to be a little different. We had troubles running the second workshop Solidity contract with this workshop. So we're going to have a standardized one that's a little more simplified and works a lot easier. So I'll leave it to Brent to do the rest of it.
Hi, my name is Brent. We're going to be talking about deploying a smart contract onto Web3 and interacting with that. So now that you know about writing your own smart contracts, you know how Web3 works, we're going to go through deploying your smart contract onto Web3 and interacting with it through that. So a lot of these commands are things that you're going to be installing certain things. I'm not going to go through every single one of those. We'll have a link in the description for you to copy and paste commands like you see me doing. So a lot of these commands are just going to pop up on the screen. Just bear with me and you'll be able to copy and paste those. So this first command is just going to install some Python things that are necessary in order to run Web3. Then you need to make a directory which we're going to be using to house all our files and everything like that. So then let's enter our directory that we made. And as you can see, I've got all the files already made on here. Just showing you those things. So this is going to make our nodes, this command right there. This is installing our Web3 Ganache client, which is necessary to deploy our nodes. And this command right here, give it a sec, is going to create all our accounts and give us public and private keys for those. So these accounts are really important, and this is basically test accounts that are going to be available for you to use. So in a new terminal window, as you see I have up here, we're going to enter the directory again. We're going to do install Sulk. This is just another thing that you need to install in order to run our Web3. Once you have that, enter the node. Like I said, all these commands that I am running right here will be available for you to easy copy and paste. Okay. So just to make sure we did this right, we're going to run web3.accounts. This is going to show all the accounts that the Web3 client can see. So this is showing that the Web3 node that we created is interacting with those accounts that we created and will be able to do things with them. So now we just need to initialize our contract. So you can see here this command that I'm entering. This shows the voting contract is a contract that we made with our smart contract. Those three names, Rama, Nick, and Jose, those are all names of the candidates that you will be able to vote for. Okay, so everything is up and running at the moment. So if we did it right, we're going to run this line right here, and this is going to vote for our candidate Rama. And we're going to run this. It's going to give us an address right here. So this is address of the transaction that we made. So on blockchain, as I'm sure you're aware, all your transactions will be able to be traced through transactions, and this is a good way of showing how that works. So now that we voted for Rama, we're going to run this command right here, and it's going to tell us how many votes he has. So you can see he has 1 vote. So we put in that vote, and it updated to the blockchain, and we can see now how many votes he has. So now that we run this, you can see that you can vote for people working directly with the blockchain, but this is kind of a little unwieldy. And in order to make things more user-friendly, we're going to make this into an HTML file and have this be able to be interacted with on a web browser. So we're going to go through doing that. So I already have these up. So this is our smart contract. This is our index.js file. So your index.js file basically is your way to communicate from your HTML file to your smart contract itself. So a lot of these things in here look pretty complicated. We'll walk through it a little bit. So this ABI definition right here is something really important, and this is what Noah went over a little bit earlier. So this includes all your function definitions, the inputs and outputs for those. So if you want to write your own contract, you need to make sure that you get everything in this field right. Otherwise, your contract isn't going to be able to communicate right. And down here, we just have some simple function definitions and how they work, as well go along with the initial smart contract. So let's open up our HTML file, just so you can take a look at that. And we will have links to these HTML and JL files for you to take a look at. Sorry, that was the wrong one. Terminal. Okay, so here's our index.html file, which is we're going to open with in our web browser. So you can see everything right here. It's just a simple HTML file, really. The candidates' names are right in here. And then right down here is where we have on-click vote for candidate. So that's just going to call our vote for candidate function and increment the amount of votes that someone has. Now, something that is very important as well when you're doing this is every single time you open up your nodes, you're going to have a specific address to get to that contract. And you're going to need to put that contract address into your index.js file right here. So we need to grab that address. So we're going to run a command, contract instance address, to get the address of the instance of our contract. Pretty self-explanatory. Grab this address and paste it into the contract under the instance on your JS file. So now we have that, we'll save it. And we will open up our file. So it's here. Open up index file. All right. So as you can see here, Rama has 1 vote because when we were interacting directly through terminal, we voted for him. So let's put in Nick's name. Let's vote for him. As you can see, it updates through here. So this is kind of like a final step. If you were to create something like this and you wanted to make things a lot more user-friendly, this also shows a really interesting real-world application for this. So if you wanted to do something like this and maybe create a real-world voting application where people are voting for someone through the blockchain and it's secure. So.
What does the back end look like?
Yeah. I've never seen it actually show up on here.
I saw something that showed up. It was like get something like on your screen that was just
When I would do this?
yeah.
So let's go, Nick.
It was like as you were switching windows, whatever. Thanks for watching. This is our 4th installment of workshops leading up to BlockHack May 5th and 6th. Hopefully with these workshops you'll be more prepared for the hackathon taking place at University of Delaware in Trabant. We have over $3,500 in prizes, and that could have your name on it. In addition, we'll also be running more workshops at the hackathon. I'll be running a JP Morgan Chase Quorum workshop, and then Art will be running a few more workshops. So come out. Thank you.